Hey, what's up? This is BreakmanX, and welcome to the game show on February 5th, 2025. How's it going, Jack?
It's going great. Just hanging out here in Kansas City, ready for the Super Bowl. Let's go.
Nice. Yeah, I see your chief regalia going on there. And Logan, how are things tonight?
Doing fantastic.
Nice. And Darria has vanished. She's become a ghost. She's haunting us this evening. Now, we're Darria-less this evening, and we will try to make do. So the game show is a celebration of video games and our collective interests mixed with a healthy dose of humor while bringing in our favorite people in the game and movie industries as guests. And tonight, we've got a great one, folks. Voultar, engineer, modder extraordinaire, educator, and gamer. And maybe some stuff about horses, but we'll talk about that later. Developed the mod that effectively fixed the majority of Super Nintendos and is well known to be among the best in the business. Voultar.com has a wealth of products and services for all your modding needs, from different chips and things, as well as having him just do it for you, which, you know, why not, right? Voultar, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing wonderful, Breakman. Thank you so much for having me, and I will do it for you if that's what you want.
Very nice. Very nice.
In real time.
Very nice. Thank you very much. That's fabulous. So let's go ahead and get right into it here. So as promised on X, what is the deal with Bob and horses?
You know, this goes back. I have to speak. I'll be very candid about this, but I have to be careful because there are identities and there are innocent people that I have to protect. It's very much like the JFK assassination. But the fact of the matter is, you know, Robert Neal, Retro RGB, about 8 years ago, called me in a drunkard state, and he was standing in a field in Connecticut. And I said, Bob, what are you doing? It's 2:30 in the morning. Why are you calling me? And he told me, I'm in trouble. The farmer's here. He's caught me with my beloved. I said, your beloved? You're married. And he said, no. No, I'm talking about Floppy the horse. And I said, Bob, you can't be doing this. And so he's told me he needed help, and I gave him help, and I got him in a rehab center, both for substance abuse and for his obsession with horses. I'm not going to talk about that beyond the platonic level, but it's something that he has confided into me, and it's something that he has been seeking help for the past several years, and I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say about it, but, you know, it's something that I feel like if I shame Bob enough, he's going to come around and he's going to let this vice go. That's the idea. So God bless him. Well, religious people have been doing it for years. They've been doing it for 300 years here in this country. So welcome to America.
No kidding.
Yes, welcome to America, indeed. So now that we've got that out of the way, and make sure you check out that lovely picture behind him. That was the first thing Voultar said to me. Jack, take us away.
Yeah. Voultar, it's great to actually meet you. You know, one of the things I really wanted to find out, obviously, you're very well known for a lot of the modding that you've done. How did you actually get into it in the first place?
You know, well, professionally, I am, or was, I'm retired now, for the most part, a systems engineer. I worked mainly with large, health-oriented companies that bought Fortune 500, there was a Fortune 500 company that I worked for, but they would buy distressed hospitals and medical facilities that were solvent, and they would make them profitable, and I was responsible for all the technology initiatives of those facilities. Now, that's sort of a bit of my technical background, but my introduction to mods and electronics with the soldering iron really starts back in the late 90s. There was this place called Video Palace where I'm from. And in this store, it was a video rental store. And after hours, people would come in. This is probably 1997, 1998, actually. I was a teenager, or very much so a preteen. But
okay.
people would come in after hours, and they would hire somebody behind the desk to take their PlayStation and to take it in the back room and do some invasive maneuvers. Now, they were installing mod chips. and I remember the smell of the solder. I remember the smell of the flux that they bought from Radio Shack that was literally right next door. And I just was enamored by this process of, holy crap, I never have to buy a PlayStation game again. And so... And that's really that is the genesis of how I got into this stuff. Notwithstanding my professional background, but it was really just a kid who didn't have a lot of pocket money that saw a way to play all the games that he ever wanted to play.
Yeah, and,
that's it.
And I can tell you, man, as a poor college kid that had a PlayStation as well at one point, like that was very much on the front of my mind. Now, shouldn't do that. I mean, let's be clear.
We don't.
You shouldn't
never
do
done
that. But as I can see how that would be very persuasive to get somebody into that line of work.
That's the American dream.
There you go. Yeah, I know a guy, BreakmanX, who modded his Saturn. That was the only thing that he'd ever modded back way before I saw any of Voultar's videos, so I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And it's really lucky that it actually functioned after I did it. But it was able to play CDRs for years and years. It was the Racket Boy mod chip.
Oh yeah, for
that
sure.
I installed. It was really frustrating, but I somehow got it to work.
But what's interesting about this is in the 1980s and in the early 1990s, for the most part, the regular Nintendo, let's go back to the late 70s, the Atari 2600, the NES of the mid 1980s, the SNES of the early 1990s, these suckers right here were bulletproof. They were bulletproof. This is 35 years old, and the only thing that's wrong with it is that it's yellowed. Now, that I can't say that across the board, certainly for all hardware that's that age. But what's interesting to me is, as the years went on, when we got into the 5th and 6th generation era, things got more sophisticated, and therefore there was more chance for things to break. Now, the PlayStation is a beautiful system that is just absolutely like the pinnacle of engineering of the mid-1990s. The Duo, which is a PC Engine derivative, that is a PC Engine coupled with a CD-ROM unit. Can we cuss mildly here? Can we say things like the S word, or is that frowned upon? I just want to know.
You can do what you want.
That thing is a piece of shit. That thing is terrible. Even if you recap it, it's going to give you problems probably for the rest of your life. So your question's interesting because if you look at things that are very lucrative and popular now, such as the Game Boy mods are insane. They're insanely popular for the original, for the color, for the pocket. But what's interesting is Nintendo designed this thing to be as cheap as possible and not to have a long lifespan of more than, say, 6 or 7 years. It was really intended to be a disposable as far as Nintendo was concerned. Yet people... That's why, for example, when you look at Game Boy Pockets on the secondary market, which they're all on the secondary market now, their screens usually have this big black hole in the center because really, it's just the pixels are just damaged, and it's just a big black rotten hole in the screen. They're just not designed to endure the times like other systems are. But what's remarkable about the Game Boy is that community, to your point, the modding community has taken a system that really wasn't supposed to live, but maybe close to maybe a little over half a decade, and they're revitalizing it with new screens, new shells, new motherboards, new sound modules, new battery replacement systems. And I never thought that those systems would be their lifespan would be so elongated by mods like this. And it's just a labor of love that's really in the name of preservation. So yeah, I'm really surprised about things like the Game Boy modding scene, how they've taken something that just had such a small expiration window or had such a limited lifespan, and these things will probably go on for another 100 years at this point. I mean, it's amazing what people are doing. And that's notwithstanding like FPGA replacements, like, the NES and the SNES and the Game Boy and even like the Nintendo 64 and Saturn and PlayStation are being supplanted. That real hardware is being supplanted by FPGAs. I never thought that there would be that kind of interest to where these systems would be simulated not a software emulation level, but on a hardware emulation level, which makes them effectively immortal. That technology immortalizes this hardware. So, yeah, I'm very surprised that people service a lot of this stuff and keep it going. But I'm even more surprised that people are. I'm humbled and very appreciative that people care so much that not only are they servicing it to keep it going, but they're also digitizing it so that it's preserved forever. So your kids and my non-existent kids can enjoy it, because I don't believe in having children.
Interesting point that you're kind of we're thinking about with this now too, talking about like how the older systems are virtually like immortal by comparison to some of the newer ones, but also that goes into the games themselves. It seems like the cartridges will last a lot longer than the discs, which will begin to rot over time too. So we'll still be playing old hardware for the cartridges, but eventually we'll have to move to digital for the CD-ROM style games.
And that's especially true for systems. So there was a certain window in the early 1990s when CD pressing technology just took a huge crap on itself. Some libraries were grossly affected. Most notably, the Sega CD library is just plagued with disk rot. So even if we service these systems, which we certainly do, and I certainly do, that doesn't discount, or that doesn't take away from the reality that even if you've got the hardware running, these disks are just rotting away left and right. So preservation in that respect is most certainly important, because like you said, this optical media, it's not just a matter of it maybe going bad in 10 years. It's going bad right now. And that's a problem, certainly.
Yeah, I know my whole Warner Brothers archives are just rotting away on my movie shelves too. So.
I want to say that you have my sympathies.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's really reinvigorated gaming for me in so many ways. So it's been awesome to follow that. And Logan, we're gonna go to Logan here in a second, but I wanted to make sure you guys knew you can interact with the show if you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook. Right below, write in a comment, and it'll send it to our Discord, and Logan will be keeping us abreast of all the comments out there. Or do one better and just join our Discord. Voultar's there. You don't want to be out.
I'm here.
Have FOMO. So, Logan, go ahead.
Yeah. So, Voultar, what got you into engineering?
I was 3 years old, and I was. This is a true story. It's a true story.
Oh, okay.
I was 3 years old, and I can remember sitting on my grandpa's lap in my grandma's kitchen, and we were taking apart a digital clock. And I remember I was taking the clock apart, and I had it all disassembled. And then my grandfather said, okay, now you're going to put it back together. And I did. And that's when I knew I was going to be working with electronics truly for the rest of my life. I was 3 years old. I kid you not.
That is really cool. That's
awesome.
I had this experience when I was in like third grade that made me interested in computers and following all this stuff, where I opened up my computer for the first time and I just saw all the traces and everything on the circuit board. And I used to imagine it. This is probably really super lame, but it's like a little city and all the like little electrons and everything going along all the different paths. And so like when I see the mods and everything, I'm always trying to imagine how they would actually work and apply and everything. So
yeah,
I don't know.
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
that's just Tron, man.
Yeah, I think Tron was probably what inspired that. But I used to really imagine that. So this is something, and I saw you posting about this today. Oh, actually, Logan, why don't you hit us up with the chat?
Yeah.
What are people saying?
Let me get it pulled back up here.
They're mostly just saying they couldn't hear me before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not using the plugin I was using ever again because it seems to drop
yeah,
one
the vast
person.
majority of them are like, I can't hear Maul, but we got that fixed, so it should be good now.
Thank you, everybody, for making.
Someone was talking about Blue Sky.
Yeah, came here from the blue sky link Voultar posted. Glad I did.
Yeah. Thanks
That
for
was
posting all that,
Brew.
Voultar, too. Appreciate
Well, thank you for having me. This is already like a ton of fun for me. I have to be perfectly candid. This is effing awesome.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's yeah, that's the whole point. We just want to have fun. Yeah, we're super stoked that you're here. We did this for about 10 years, and then we had 10 years off, and then we just decided to do it again. So here we are back. So So here's something that's not so awesome though. So I saw you tweeting about this. So it's pretty common to see products developed by the community ripped off on AliExpress. And we see this very, very commonly. Is there any way to prevent this, and how does this affect small businesses like your own?
No, you can mitigate it, you can slow it down, but you can't. And it's a futile effort to try to stop it or hinder it from happening. That's not possible. It's unfortunate that people. This is going to get a little geopolitical, but I'm not wanting to talk about politics. You have an area across the pond that does a lot of mass production and a lot of mass manufacturing. Manufacturing that we really can't do here. Yes, England. For Christ's sakes, what the hell's wrong with you? It's not England. It's not England. But we have this area in China that is most responsible for all of our semiconductor manufacturing and all of our printed circuit board assembly. Unfortunately, what's happening is, and what's happened to this community, which is very niche, by the way, but it happens in other industries too, but this is something that I can speak on personally. When you work with these, I'm going to call them board houses, and a board house is just a company that you solicit and hire to assemble and create your designs and your boards, your mods, let's say. You hire them. Unfortunately, they're not always super scrupulous. And they will take that board file and they will sell it to another manufacturer or another vendor, often from Alibaba, often from AliExpress. And despite your best efforts, this just happens. You guys would be surprised at the bidding wars that happen for devices such as the RetroTink 5X and the RetroTink 4K, so it can be stolen and produced for pennies on the dollar. And I mean pennies on the dollar. And
it's absolutely terrible.
It's a horrible thing. And that, of course, when you say that, some people will surmise that you're talking bad against, the Chinese manufacturing. No, that's not even faintly what I'm saying. All I'm saying is all of our manufacturing comes over typically from Shenzhen. And in this area, we have a lot of what we call pirates, hardware pirates, that we're across the pond. We have no, ultimate control of. And it just happens. So and I got a lot of crap for this because I designed something, as some of you know, called the Edge Enhancer for the Super Nintendo.
We're about to get into it.
Well, that I appreciate that, but I designed something called the Edge Enhancer, and in all of the press photos, the photos sent to the photos that were published, I think, by Retro Gamer magazine, Tito of Macho Nacho, who's a very popular YouTuber who did a video review of the install. There's a glob top on top of all the sensitive electronics, and the reason for that is because I know it's going to be cloned. But I would at least like to make some of my money back after about, $1 bazillion worth of investment and 4 years of R&D. And people just lose their minds over this because they're like, do you think that this is really going to stop cloners and manufacturers from lifting and commandeering your design? I'm not stupid, you dummy. I know it's not. But it's at least going to slow them down, so maybe I can release it before they can. It's a terrible, heartbreaking thing. A lot of people think that this is just a hobby. It is just a hobby, but guys, I'm here to tell you, a lot of people put an incredible amount of money and resources behind these small shop projects, and when they're cloned, not only have you taken somebody's livelihood away, a lot of people, you're taking away, like, you're almost taking away their life in a sense, because this is literally what they do for a living. This is literally their cash stream. This is how they make money. And so I understand that everybody wants to pay less for things, but all the stuff that we design, it doesn't just manifest and materialize out of a vacuum. And so shit, come on. Hey boy, come on. That's from Mega Man 8, by the way. Don't believe any of you chaps have ever played that, but
I love Mega Man 8.
I'm just kidding.
Even though the voice work is what it is.
Do you know the boss I'm talking about? He's the guy that he hides behind the trees at the end. He's a robot master, and you have to shoot him, and he goes, "Hey boy, come on."
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's
Really
like it's one of
weird
the
guy.
last four. Yeah, it is weird.
I think he worked at Never Neverland before he was a voice actor.
It's definitely one of the weirder
That's
robot
great.
masters they've had.
That's great.
But to my point though,
Yeah.
cloning's devastating. I don't condone it. I think it's terrible. It takes food off of people's tables, and unfortunately, fortunately, overwhelmingly, people are good, and they rail against that sort of thing. And support the creators, guys. Just that's all I can tell you. Support them, because it's not cheap and it's not easy to design this stuff. It's not.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, and no, I'm really glad that it exists. Like I said, it's really kind of rejuvenated what I do with gaming lately. And before we get into this next topic, I just wanted to point out that the Edge Enhancer definitely lives up to advertising. If you've seen any of the stuff about it, seen the before and after pictures, I put some on the Discord. It is absolutely as good as you would hope it would be, and I've been enjoying it massively. So if you have any inclination and have a 2-chip NES or SNES, you definitely are gonna want to get this.
Thank you for that.
So
Voultar.com. Hit it up.
So Voultar, you decided that the big thing that you're known for is the SNES fix that you created, the chip that you created for that, the mod. How do you take an idea? How do you go from idea and like, hey, this is something that I think I can make better or I can fix on the system? How do you take it from that idea to where you actually have an actual working product in your hand? It's like, what does that design process look like?
Pain, agony, despair, deep sense of longing, and yet pity at the same time. Listen, manifesting something that's really never existed before and materializing that is a very difficult thing, and it all starts with a very clear vision. The SNES Edge Enhancer, nobody ever thought that the SNES could really be fixed. People for 20 years thought that we could put band-aids on it and we could sort of recover that video and make it better, but nobody. Retro RGB, and I'm not going to plug him because I'm not a good friend of his or anything, but he has a website. Retro RGB exists solely because he was looking for a way to get the SNES to look fantastic, because everyone knew or thought that the 2-chip SNES just wasn't ever going to output video, and so the quest for the 1-chip SNES, which is a different revision of the SNES that outputs very sharp and stunning video. But my point is, those things, if they are created with the smallest baby steps imaginable. So when you're creating something like the Edge Enhancer, you don't think about sharpening the video. You think, I wonder if I could just clean the video up a little bit. And so you do that. And then you step off of that and you jump off of that, and then you say, I wonder if I could fix the amplitude, or if I could fix the brightness just a little bit so it doesn't look so dark. And then you do that. And then you say, I know everybody else has tried everything in the world to recover and fix the blurriness, because the SNES 2-chip, I don't know how many of you are classic retro game players, but there's a difference between there's a difference between composite video and RGB video. Obviously, I mean, RGB video is very high quality, very sharp. Well, the 2-chip SNES, regardless if you're outputting composite video or RGB, it's pretty close to being the same. Yes, there's an appreciable difference, but it still looks really horrible. You go from fixing a few things. You fix the color amplitude, you fix the brightness, you fix some of the noise issues, and then you say, I wonder if there's some small things that I can do to just sharpen it up and recover it. And then you do that, and you're like, I wonder if I can push this further. And then I wonder if I can push this further. If anyone started out making something thinking that they were just going to do it all without any sort of these small graduations, we'd be still sitting here. So the way that I manifest or materialize something, and I think a lot of makers do, is they break it down and they compartmentalize it. I know this sounds very basic and simple, but find a couple of things that are small and that seem more attainable or obtainable to you. Do that and then build off of that. And after a while, whether that be weeks or months or even maybe a couple of years, you're probably going to realize your dreams in life, and you're going to make it happen. So start small and do baby steps. That's how it happens. That's really how it happens.
Let's check out really quick what this thing does. Let's look at the before here. So this is the 2-chip SNES before.
That's it.
Look at all the blurry blurs. Okay. Now, after Voultar. Look at that.
Welcome to America.
Please.
Look at that crisp gorgeousness. It's pretty amazing. And it actually does look that good. I think if what you wrote on my box is correct, that
You
I
were
was
the first of many.
Yeah,
you
I
were
was
the first of many. My
I was the
friend.
first to get one, which I was super stoked about. I'm going to keep that box.
Thank you.
It's pretty cool.
Well, thank you.
That you wrote that on there. But no, and but it really is. It's made me play a lot of SNES. I had to have surgery in October, and I got the SNES back from you like right after kind of when I could play games again. So it was like perfect timing. So
Good.
awesome.
I hope your surgery went well, by the way.
Oh, it did. It went good.
Good.
I'm doing good.
Good.
I'm doing good. But if anyone wants to get that, again, Voultar.com. You have the retail kits, I believe, available now too, and the install. Both?
So the DIY kits. So, I mean, we've got to talk about some tariff stuff, I guess.
Oh, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's coming.
The DIY kits will be, God willing, available in February. The documentation has taken me about 6 months to polish and to have presentable to the public. And that's been a huge labor of love. Thank you very much. But the kits should be, the DIY kits, if everything goes well with the logistics between us and China, we never know what's going to happen. And one minute they stop incoming packages, until everything, it's just a bunch of nonsense. But February.
Awesome. So then people actually do it themselves. Otherwise, have Voultar do it for you. Go ahead, Jack.
If you can't, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, and I can't look at you guys right now, but I just wanted to say, if you can't do it yourself, Voultar can do it for you. I'm sorry. It didn't come out right.
Or maybe it did.
Oh, God. Yeah, maybe it did.
Maybe it did. Maybe it did. Jack, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, just sort of a little follow up. So, like, what kind of prices do you have for those services?
So
See, now you're bringing attention to it.
Yeah.
So if you want, so the edge enhancer is what I would make, what I would say is akin to an around the world, which means that you get the edge enhancer, a good cleaning, and I totally restore the system in terms of recapping everything. Now, if anything is killing Super Nintendos, it's the fact that we have these old caustic electrolytic caps that are exploding. They're exploding their juices all over the place, and they're literally ruining the boards. Now, if you go to they're literally ruining Super Nintendo main boards, and if you go to my Twitter, you'll see several examples of that from customers who send me their systems for the edge enhancer, but I require them to allow me to recap and service the entire system while doing that. But the edge enhancer kit, the installation for that, and a full capacitor replacement is $175 flat rate.
And
Awesome.
it'll keep your SNES going for a very long time. Mine had the juices all over it. From what you sent me a
I've never seen
picture.
the SNES juice, but
Well, let's not get too specific on this because there are children here. Not mine. I don't have any. I don't believe in that sort of thing. Why are you laughing?
But yeah,
Bryce got some wandering around in the back.
I do. They're probably asleep by now, but it's late. Yeah, no, the SNES mod is great. And it's something I've been waiting for a really long time. The second I saw you write it on Twitter, I was like, okay, got to get this in right away.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the support.
Of course. All right, Maul. You're
Yeah,
up.
just guys, you got obviously the powerful SNES mod out there. What other mods have you been working on? What do you got in your repertoire? And do you have any favorite systems you've been working on?
I don't. It's interesting. I have a lot of things that I do. So I have other video mods. I have an RGB bypass mod for a different type of Super Nintendo called the One Chip that can certainly help clean up the analog video, because the idea with analog video is that, yes, it's analog. It's not a lossless digital video output, but we wanted to make it look as good as we can so that when we put it through a device such as a RetroTink 4K or RetroTink 5X or an OSSC or whatever, it's going to look the best that it can, and it'll damn near look like an emulator. So I have options for the Super Nintendo, for certain versions of the Nintendo 64. Those aren't my favorite, and those aren't really particularly fun for me because I'm burned out on all that crap. But the fact is, it's not crap. Let's not gatekeep, okay, guys? Seriously, enough. It's thundering. I don't know if you can hear it. But my favorite mod, one of my most favorite things that I ever designed is I love RPGs, and I love RPGs that were never really localized in the United States, or they were very super expensive in the United States. So, for example, pretty much all the Dragon Quest games for the Super Nintendo, for the Super Famicom, they never came out in the States.
Yeah.
I designed something called the Super Stacker, which allows you to translate Japanese Super Famicom cartridges into English or whatever language that there's a patch available for, without rewiring the cartridge, without invasively removing the mask ROMs and doing a bunch of rewiring and gutting parts out. And I have gotten more pleasure out of that personally than any other thing that I've ever made, because it's so much fun to play a game like Dragon Quest III for the Super Famicom, which was already a remake of Dragon Quest III for the Famicom, that never saw a United States localization here. That to me is fun. And I have something similar for I have the equivalent to that for the Famicom, because there's so many games, guys. You guys realize there are so many Square games that didn't come out. There's so many Enix games that didn't come out. I mean, geez Louise, WTF, we missed out on some of the best games ever.
Did.
I mean, God, Secret of Mana 2, or technically 3, we didn't get that here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not until Trials of Mana. But, with the Super Stacker, anything's possible. You can do it. You can do anything.
I'm finally playing that. I've never played. I played it with the translation patch on the SD2 SNES, but it looks great on my SNES now, for sure.
Do you like that? Are you enjoying it?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And it looks just ridiculous. Like the graphics are astounding. The music's great. I don't know if I like it better than Secret of Mana yet, but I do. I am really enjoying it.
Good.
You're in good company here.
Shit,
That's something I'm gonna have to check out, because like Final Fantasy V is one of my favorite games, and
so good.
Literally the first 3 times I tried to play it, literally just translating it like line by line as I was playing it. So something like that would be.
That's
Can I tell you a
Gucci's
secret?
favorite. So
What's up?
I'll tell you a secret. Final Fantasy V is the entire reason why I designed the Super Stacker.
That's awesome.
That's a true story. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
That's my favorite. The job system in that game. Everything about Final Fantasy V, it is my favorite Final Fantasy of the Super Famicom.
The big battle on the bridge is probably my favorite piece of music that Uematsu composed, and it's one of my favorite fights in the entire series.
I'm going to tell you the truth. I cried in bed for like a week. Why are you laughing? I mean, I'm telling you the truth.
I'm laughing because I'm not
Don't
exactly there,
man.
but I'm very, very close.
He's opening his heart to us.
I mean, I literally, there are some things that have moved me in video games. Final Fantasy V moved me to absolute tears. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm a very sensitive man. That's okay. And I cried.
That's awesome.
A lot. Anywho, so yeah, I understand, but Final Fantasy V definitely was a game that was the catalyst or the inspiration for me to make the Super Stacker, which, before that, you had to spend a lot of money. Like, if you wanted Final Fantasy V, you were going to spend a lot of money on a very crappily made reproduction cartridge. I mean, that's just the way it was. Like, you would buy a $90-$100 reproduction cartridge, and it would just be terribly made, and often they didn't even work correctly.
Yeah.
I read recently that 5 is Sakaguchi's favorite, which is kind of interesting.
I could see that.
Definitely one. I need to replay it. It's been forever since I played that. That was on an emulator back on forever ago. I need to get back on that. Logan,
You're
why
gonna get
don't
me
you-
to go play
go
Mother
ahead, Maul.
3 with that Super Stacker.
Yeah.
Oh, guy, let me tell you something. You're in for a flipping party. I'm just telling you. It's party time, baby.
I mean, I don't know if the attitude of the later part of that game is party time or whatever, but I'll enjoy it anyway. That's fine. It's fine. Existential Dilemma is right up my alley. So
Yeah.
Nice. All right, Logan, why don't you catch us up with the
Yeah,
people out
I'm
there?
hitting up
There's
the
a
chat.
lot of stuff that's gone on this round, and then we can get to your question.
Yeah, all right. So I'm going to start here with I'd love to hear personal opinions on the laser active CLD A100. I don't feel it's talked about enough from Joshua.
Why don't we
Having died-
stop there for a second, see if Voultar has a response to that, and then we'll go on to the.
I mean, I don't want to listen. I don't want to be disrespectful to you. You're a very nice guy. I choose not to talk about crap. And that I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know a lot about that. I don't have enough experience with that to have an informed opinion. I think that the laser active stuff is so esoteric even for me. And look back there above that monitor. I have a Super Nintendo with a CD-ROM module. That's as rare as it gets. But I don't know anything about the laser active hardware.
Wait a second. You have Super Nintendo with the CD-ROM back there?
Do you want me to prove it?
That's
Kind
pretty
of.
amazing. It's like the Nintendo PlayStation.
Yeah. No, well, he's grabbing that. I gotta say, I
Good
looked up
Lord.
what this is because I hadn't heard of it before.
Oh
and
my
it's
God.
a Laserdisc player with a Sega Genesis in it. Whoa.
Oh, whoa. That's awesome.
I've never seen anyone hold one before. I've seen pictures. Oh my God.
So
That's
I'm
incredible.
being mildly dishonest here. So this is not
The Nintendo PlayStation.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is not the Nintendo
You
PlayStation.
let me
but
on
what-
there for a second. I was
Well,
excited.
what this is extraordinarily rare. It's called the Game Station, and what this is it's using real. There's nothing fake about it in terms of the hardware. This is an actual Super Nintendo using real Rico or Super Nintendo hardware. It's a piracy device. And it's very, 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 it's very uncommon because this is a Super Nintendo device for piracy that allows you, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to bump that. It allows you to put all of your Super Nintendo ROMs on disc. And then
Nintendo's
you
at
go
my
to
door.
town.
Oh, man.
So anyways, it's I keep it out here because I like to, if my cat's out here, I'll put it on the floor or something and let him sleep on it. But it's really neat old piece of history. And so, anyways, maybe you guys like to see that.
No, that's really
that's
cool.
awesome.
I'm glad that you showed that for sure.
I mean, that was probably huge when it was out.
Oh,
I
insane!
mean, that would be prime time. Like if you had a CDR, like you could copy just about everything onto a single CD. So
Yep.
I could see how that'd be very, very popular. around that
Absolutely,
time.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Logan, do you want to
Now-
continue through the chat? There's a
I did-
lot.
Yeah, there is a lot. I will say though.
Thank you,
I
everyone,
did
by the
look
way.
up-
We appreciate it.
I did have to look up what the laser active CLD A100 is, and I didn't know this, but it was a Laserdisc player with a Sega Genesis in it. I gotta say, if that worked reliably, that sounds perfect to me because I love both Laserdisc and Sonic the Hedgehog.
Someone
so,
did a
like,
video on it. I can't remember if it was GameSack or My Life in Gaming or maybe both.
Yeah.
Someone did a video on it.
Is that the device? Now, I worked on one about 10 years ago. It's actually the video game console part. It's compartmentalized, but is it called the pack system where like there's either a PC Engine module in it or a Sega Genesis module in it, and that's
Yeah.
separate from the Laserdisc unit?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, I worked on one of those in 2014, and it was a nightmare. No, I mean just from an engineering standpoint, there was just a lot of things going on in there. It was a nightmare.
Right.
But it looks cool. They look really cool. There's a guy that's a modder. He's pretty good. His name is Zaxor, and I think he specializes in servicing that equipment.
I have the Turbo Nanza.
That's cool.
His Turbo Nanza thing.
Oh yeah, sure, yep. Mhm.
It works really well. All right, Logan,
All right.
continue through
So
journey
next, Storm Eagle asks, "What made you want to make a hardware mod for the SNES Voultar?"
through. Might have been before Jack's question.
Possibly.
Well,
yeah, so
Awesome.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
you can answer that one as well. I think we did ask that, but
So I'll tell you the original, the prototypes for the edge enhancer really kind of materialized in 2020. I designed mods long before then, simpler mods for the Super Nintendo or the Sega Genesis. But more specifically, the Super Nintendo Edge Enhancer, I wanted to make that because Bob told me that I couldn't. But Retro RGB told me, he'll tell you if this is true. He told me that I couldn't. But more specifically, I want to give credit where credit is due. That thing never would have happened, and it wouldn't be not even a fraction as good as it is today without very good personal friends of mine, Mike Chi, Dr. Chi of RetroTink. He was unbelievably integral to the success and the quality of that. Stepan Kulov of HD Rectal Vision, who is probably the laziest, most incompetent human being from a productivity standpoint. Nonetheless, he's a very personal good friend of mine, and he's one of the best engineers, and in the analog domain especially, that I've ever known. And a guy named Furtek, that's Furrtek. Furtek is unbelievably legendary in the decapping scene.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
There's nobody. Oh, no. You're absolutely fine. There's nobody better than him. And the reason that the Edge Enhancer really works as well as it does is because Furtek helped me by taking, he already taken decapped shots of the PPU2. Now, the PPU2 is where the DAC is. That's digital to analog converter. So all the digital video stuff is converted into analog, and then it outputs through the analog RGB pins. That DAC structure and those DAC structures, he walked me through so we could draw and plot them out so that we could know specifically what was causing the problems that was plaguing the video output or the video quality of the Super Nintendo. So anywho, that thing was a labor of love that I really enjoyed making, that took me it took years to perfect across. There's about 20 something odd variations of the Super Nintendo. Different motherboard, and that's including combinations of motherboard revisions, chip revisions, and it's a mismatch, mixed match is what it really is. And all of these different combinations have different problems, and taking all of these different problems and designing a single cohesive design that would satisfy all issues and quail all problems, that was fun, and that was absolutely my love letter to the Super Nintendo. And not my first, but it's the thing that I've enjoyed most working on, because it's been by far the most challenging and the most significant in terms of like my contributions to the hardware scene and just to these old legacy systems, for sure.
Oh, much appreciated. And if this is in any way going to give away any proprietary stuff, I absolutely don't. But can you like very generally describe some of the issues that it fixes, or kind of how it works, without giving away proprietary?
Well, it's fine. It's these are things that I've talked about since 2020. The problem with the SNES. So the Super Nintendo has, internally to its picture processing unit, it has a little sequence of gates that convert the digital video bits into an analog format that we can interface with our televisions and displays. See that? See that up there?
Hi, Bob.
That sick bastard. But no. So what the problem really comes down to is Ricoh, who is the manufacturer and I think the layout company that put everything on the mask, they did some very odd things. So the DAC of the Super Nintendo is really 3 mini DACs that are composited together that will give you full range video. And the way that these DAC structures are implemented, let's just say that it creates a lot of noise. It creates a lot of noise in between these structures that telegraph to the video output. Fortunately, this noise that I'm talking about it exists at a very specific frequency in like what's called the small signal domain. And because it's limited to a certain window in frequency or in spectrum, we are able to non-destructively, which is what nothing else does to my knowledge. We were able to non-destructively recover that video, clean it up and tighten it up, and make it look 95% equivalent to the SNES Gold Standard, which is the one-chip SNES. Now, the one-chip SNES is a much later cost-reduced version of the Super Nintendo that Nintendo put out at the tail end of the Super Nintendo's life. And this hardware consolidates all of the different chips into one single codified ASIC. One of the things about that system is, and that also includes the SNES Mini, which is the little smaller Super Nintendo. They output razor sharp video. Razor sharp video. But those systems are more or less considered by a lot of people to be equivalent to an emulation system.
Right.
Because they're not perfect in terms of the way the original chipset was implemented in the single chip design. There are a lot of games that are just problematic. They have sprite corruption, they have graphical corruption, and it's just not perfect. So the two chip, we are able to recover. A lot of people confuse the edge enhancer and say that it's a video sharpener. No, it's not a video sharpener. There are video sharpeners that already exist for the two-chip SNES, which are roughly the equivalent of opening a picture in Photoshop and just clicking the sharpening filter. That's exactly what those things are. They're just an artificial overlay that kind of sort of makes the video look better under certain conditions. For example, let's say that these older sharpeners that were used, the title screen of Super Mario World may look really good, that specific video content, but the way it's applied, it's very non-linear. And so while the title screen of Super Mario World may look fantastic, the title screen to Super Castlevania 4 is going to look like a muddied, bright and dark mess. Mm-hmm. This doesn't do anything like that, and that's because we're not trying to take this one-size-fits-all sharpening appliance and jam it onto the SNES and say, there you go, you're fixed. We are taking the video and we are recovering it in a way so that all video content across the board benefits to its maximum potential. And that's what the edge enhancer is. It's an enhancer. It's not a sharpener. It's not any sort of device that cheats. Mm-hmm. We're recovering that video signal and we're almost reconstituting it to where it's, as I said, the one chip is the pinnacle gold standard of sharp video out of the Super Nintendo. The two-chip SNES with the edge enhancer is about 95-98% to the equivalent of that. Meaning when you're 6 feet away from a normally sized screen, it's virtually imperceptible to 90% of people, I would say. Oh.
Fantastic.
And I think that BreakmanX, the legend, could probably talk about. I mean, he could probably, comment about the before and after differences. Like,
oh my god. Yeah, it's a huge difference because I had been using like a mister because my SNES was looking so fuzzy and it bothered me how blurry it was. And I've actually always noticed that it was blurry. Even as a kid, I always remember the NES looking sharper, and it just always was like, why is it blurrier? And people are like, it's not blurry, but I really like playing.
Shut up! It's not blurry.
Shut up! Yeah, I would get that. Yeah, but the playing with real hardware is something that I just really like. I don't quite know why, but there's something that about it that is just really awesome. I love playing with the original stuff, and so getting my kind of childhood SNES that I got for Christmas way back in I think it was Christmas '91, that first Christmas they were out. And getting that with the edge enhancer, it now looks like it literally I don't think could look better. I mean, when I play it, I play it both with with scan lines, without scan lines. I've done all sorts of different things with the retro tank to like really get in and just see how sharp it is. And with the HD retrovision cables that I'm using with it, it looks absolutely astounding. I mean,
Break, you're a special kind of nerd for sure, because when I was at your house, first time I've been at your house in years, coming out for a visit over Christmas, what's the first thing we do other than eat chicken noodle soup is
homemade.
You take me down to your basement and you're like, this is a Ninja Gaiden 2 on this type of monitor, and here it is on this display. Look how crisp it is on this one. And that's what we did, just went through all these different monitor types and looked at Ninja Gaiden.
That's me.
It's a good time. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, good. Yeah, it's awesome. So I want to do a video on it at some point when I get a little bit of time on the edge enhancer. I think it's really, really fabulous.
No, it's neat as hell though. Like, I really enjoyed all the stuff you were showing me out there. So that was great.
Yeah, and you should come by more often. Like, come down from Vegas.
It's I mean, yeah, it's an expensive trek though, but when I can, for sure.
Casa su casa, and we'll make more chicken noodle soup. Logan, do you want to continue? Oh yeah, continue down through our.
I've got a question actually at the end of the chat that was asked in response to what we were just talking about. So Castlemania Games asked if the signal could be intercepted instead of recovered.
Well, excuse me. That's effectively what the older sharpening mods did. They would intercept the signal and they would reshape it by putting this boosting filter that would make the pixels under certain situations, as I was talking about earlier, look very much so sharper. But the problem is also when you sharpen the video. So the Super Nintendo, for example, has a lot of noise. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the dreaded vertical jail bars of the Super Nintendo.
Oh yeah.
But
Final
when the
Fantasy
system
3.
is that big, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, that
like
was
a big column coming straight down the middle of the
that
screen.
was the first game I tried, by the way.
And I'm sure there was no bar, right?
There was no bar.
Not a damn bar in
barless.
sight. It was barless. Yeah, just like my hometown. But like, so okay, the deal is when the SNES, when you've got that Vaseline, stock image of an unmodified system, you've blurred a lot of that noise. So while you can still see it, it is not nearly as offensive as when you sharpen it. Because when you sharpen it and you don't address all of those analog distortions, you were just making all of that speckly crap and all those vertical aliasing bars coming down that much more prominent. And if you don't deal with that, all of that sharpening that you're doing is just turning the volume up on all the static in the background. And so that's another reason why, these things have been out forever, and Retro RGB is pretty much the premier place to learn about any sort of mods for any kind of system that's going to provide or yield any sort of an appreciable result. Those things were never talked about, not because certain people didn't like them. They're just garbage. And so I'm just telling you, they're just crap. And also, if you install some of those wrong, and you mess up and make a very silly little mistake that I've made a bunch of times on my own stuff, you're going to very good chance of blowing out a chip or doing irreparable harm with some of those modifications.
Well, if you would make that mistake, I would definitely make a mistake.
I'm human. I'm not, eagle-eyed, sexy and, the best at this stuff. I'm just sexy. That's it. That's the only claim to fame I have here. So
I've seen your videos. You get pretty tight, in like these super small areas with the camera.
I am tight.
Above.
I am tight. Like I said, I'm sexy.
Videos, folks.
I need to stop talking and say.
I want to thank you for buying those, by the way, those videos.
Oh, that did not buy videos. That took me a second to get. That was
whatever you say.
All right, Logan. Are there any more chats you want to hit up?
There's a few,
say their
I
names.
hope people know we're just joking here.
Yeah.
We are just kidding. He didn't buy any videos. He just used a credit card.
And they're hosted on Voultar.com if you want to see what he's talking about.
I'm gonna
/Voultar.com/Breakman.
God.
I'm gonna do
Gonna
two
be in
more.
the
There's
paper.
another one in response to this, and then a different question that was asked a while back, and then I think we'll move on from the chat for now.
The Castlemania Games guys in
Yeah.
there. I've bought tons of stuff there. That's cool.
Castlemania
Hello.
Games asks, is this why an internal HDMI mod wouldn't work without enhancer technology?
Oh, and so there has been an internal HDMI mod that was partially functional, but it was largely incomplete, and the maker of that project dropped it a couple of years ago. As a matter of fact, Bob Retro RGB has a prototype of that, but there were a lot of things that were left unfinished. And unfortunately, an HDMI modification that uses the actual real hardware and doesn't leverage the power of an FPGA to emulate certain functions to make digital video, it requires a very sophisticated, and as far as the SNES is concerned, a very dangerous process of removing a very heat-sensitive chip that you really don't want to expose to any more heat than absolutely necessary, because you have to break the connection basically between the chip and the SNES. This mod has to sit in the middle so it can intercept reads and writes to the picture processing unit, and the only way to do that is to take the chip off the board and to put it on what's called an interposer. So while digital mods are certainly possible and plausible, they introduce a very real risk of doing irreparable damage. And it has nothing to do with how good you are with a hot air rework station. It has everything to do with these chips, especially 35 years later, are extraordinarily sensitive to heat.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Any more, Logan?
And then the
Yeah,
last
right.
question I'm going to ask for now, from Kellen Brew. Curious what the reason is Nintendo supported RGB video on the SNES in the first place, especially considering later revisions and later consoles didn't.
That's a good one.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think the reason that the Super Nintendo, as well as the Sega Master System and the Sega Genesis, all supported RGB video is mainly because of Europe. I don't think that they ever intended the Sega Genesis or the Super Nintendo, maybe they did, to be used as a computer that needed a high resolution or a high image quality monitor. I think that the reason that it has RGB really is because that's exposed to the video interface is because in Europe, we're not as lucky as them. We had to deal with composite video. They had beautiful RGB video built into their displays that was accessible via a SCART connector. So I really think it was for the rest of the world, the rest of the non-Western world, that adopted a much higher quality video standard than we did in the United States. Why we never adopted RGB on the consumer level? Well, from what I've been told, especially from an uncle of mine, a great uncle of mine, rest in peace, rest in peace, Uncle Willard, you son of a bitch. He told me, and he was an old retired radio engineer. He told me it was because they couldn't agree on an interface, a physical plug, a standard that everyone liked. And that's why S-Video became prominent, because it was a simple little mini DIN 4 plug. And that's why we didn't get that is allegedly why we didn't get RGB. But the reason those the signals are there, I really think it's because PAL, CCAM, pretty much everywhere else in the world other than the NTSC broadcast, they all had RGB capable television sets, not even an expensive monitor, but just any old TV.
I just have to ask you before we move on. Is there any way to get that the SCART cable to snap in better? Like I've switched over to the HD Retrovision for most of my stuff, but I just don't have enough input. So I still have SCART on a couple things, and especially that SCART that comes from I have to just get it just right, like every few weeks.
I'll tell you this. Okay, in the words of Napoleon Dynamite, okay, turn it off. It's a piece of crap. It doesn't work. That's just SCART. I have a whole box of SCART interfaces over there, and they're all garbage. There's a reason we call it SHART. It's because it's not good. Okay? It's terrible. It's a terrible, bulky, antiquated interface. And it's those
they even
things
screwed it in.
That's why Mike Chi, I don't think I have one out here.
No, I screwed it in. I screwed it into the retro tank. it's
Mike Chi even put the little threads on there.
Yeah, I have it screwed in and it still jiggles.
It's still a piece of crap.
Yeah.
It's a piece of crap.
That's maybe your next mod, fixing that, maybe?
No, I told people got so mad about this. I told people, I said, I'm never messing with SCART. F SCART. Get your SHART cables from someone else. Dude, people showed up at this house with pitchforks. They were infuriated. How dare you? There's nothing wrong with SCART. I spent $50,000 on SCART cables. Well, you're the dummy, not me.
They do look good if you get it just right, but it's frustrating as hell.
I mean, you look at that thing wrong, it's popping out. It's just
does.
like my ex-wife. I mean, it's just going to happen. I mean,
That makes me feel that makes me feel better. That makes me
I
feel
don't know why
better.
you're laughing. But no, it really, SCART, it's just, I was so upset, to be all joking aside. SCART was very prominent. It was the, video interface standard in PAL territories. Japan too, same interface, but we called it JP21. It was wired differently. But when these RGB mods started becoming more popular here in the States, around 2009, 2010, I was sorely disappointed when us, Americans, decided to adopt SCART. We could have come up with a much better interface because everything was so expensive. Because we had to import expensive SCART switchers if we wanted to connect more than one device to our television. We had to come up with all these workarounds to adopt a video standard that was never here in the first place, and I think we should have just stuck to something like a VGA box or a VGA connector or a DB15 rather. Anywho, me and Mike Chi have shared emotional stories with each other about SCART and how we absolutely hate it. Mike Chi would murder SCART if it were a person. I swear to God, it's true. And I would help him hide the body. I would help him.
Oh, that makes me feel
I'm
better.
getting serious about this. I'm sorry, but yeah, listen, it's not a problem that's unique to you. It's just terrible. It's not very good.
I have it like glued to the thing and everything. Logan, continue through.
Yeah.
Sir.
So I'll ask my question now. What mods are the easiest for new people to modding to perform, and which ones are the most difficult?
I'll tell you what the easiest mod is and what I think the most functional mod is. If you want to get into modding and you want to get into sort of the scene and just sort of dip your toe in a little bit, change the batteries in your SNES and your NES and your Genesis cards. That's the best thing that you can do. That's very functional. That actually means something. A soldering iron is very inexpensive. You can get a pretty robust. These soldering stations, you really can't see them. Well, maybe you can if I make a little adjustment here. Yeah, you can. Sure, you can. These are the same Kescher soldering stations that I reviewed on my YouTube channel 5 years ago. When people asked me what's an affordable soldering station, these soldering stations are about $50 or $60 now. I use them every day. A cheap soldering station, some coin cell batteries, and a couple of game cartridges, and then you're off to the races.
So thanks to you, I got one of those, and I changed the battery in my GameCube. I put a whole new thingy in there.
Good.
And then I also did the Dreamcast.
Good for you.
Thanks
Good
to
for
you.
you. Yep. No, thank you for, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm hey man, you empowered yourself. You had a Ricky Lake moment where you just took control and you did something meaningful. I love hearing stories like that.
Oh, it's so much fun. And by the way, out there, if anyone else has stories about Voultar helping them with his educational videos on Twitch and YouTube, he might like to hear them tonight. So
I would love to hear it from you, and thank you, and God bless your families.
All right, Logan, I think we're about to the bottom of the chat. You might be able to actually get to your question. This is great, though, by the way. We love all the chat coming in. It's really wonderful. We love the interactivity.
I just want to say that I'm very sorry for monopolizing this evening.
That's why you're here.
We're here to interview
That's
you.
why we have you here.
No, you're the special guest. You were the last one featured on the intro. We love having you here. This is great.
Did you hear that, Bob?
No
I'm
complaints.
number one.
No complaints.
I actually did just ask my question.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was so enamored with the sharts.
Can we get a clip of that, please, where he says that so I can sequence it for my own personal uses?
Maybe that'll be the reel this week. One of the reels. All right, well, then I'll head back into it. Good job, Logan. That was a lot to weed through. You're doing a great job. Okay, this is one of my favorite questions. I asked this one to try as well, and I think I'm going to ask it to everybody this season. All right, Voultar, you've got the time cleared on your schedule. What game would you most like to erase from your memory and experience again for the first time?
I'm going to table your question because the gentleman that preceded you was cheated. He asked me 2 questions. He asked me what the simplest mod was, and then he followed it up with one of the most challenging or difficult mods. I would say I want to answer that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why
I would say one of the most difficult mods that you can do that is readily available, in my opinion, comes down to those digital HDMI mods for, say, the PlayStation or the Nintendo 64, where you have very fine pitch soldering, and one little mistake can brick literally the whole system and just ruin your entire evening if you don't know what you're doing. Now, your question, Breakman, if I could go back and I could erase one memory of any of the women I've been... Oh, wait, no. One memory of a game that I would like to relive and re-experience again. Was that your question?
Yes.
That's very
And you
beautiful.
have all the time in the world. Like, there's no time limit. You can re-experience a game like you've never played it before. What would it be?
That's pretty easy for me. I would say it would be The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past.
It's a good one. It's really
Absolutely.
good. Such a great choice.
Followed by Highlight 3D. That's clearly a joke. That's
interesting.
clearly a
Okay.
I
joke.
was just saying that's
Like, that's quite a gulf in quality.
I'm just seeing if you guys
Yeah.
are paying attention here, okay? Come on.
We're paying attention. Now, okay.
Man.
What about Link to the Past in specific brings you there?
You know, that's a game that's clearly a timeless classic, but that is the title. I don't know if this is more nostalgia speaking for me, but I remember sitting in my living room and watching my older brother play that and just being absolutely what is the word I'm looking for? Entranced by the music and by the imagery. I had never seen anything like that before. I mean, I've seen plenty of video games at that time, but there was something very uniquely special about A Link to the Past. And I just go back to a better time, I guess, in my head when I was a young child. And so maybe, of course, if we remove those memories and if I were to play it again, I'm not that same young child. It's not those same circumstances. I may be speaking more out of nostalgia than I am of actually enjoying the game. So I'm going to choose a second game, and that would be Plumbers Don't Wear Ties.
big
Solid
FMV
choice.
fan, huh?
Nostalgia's not going to get
fellas,
that one.
Fellas, I like the FMVs. What can I tell you? I'm a simple man.
Fantastic choice. Jack, hit us up.
Yeah. So you obviously have a lot of love for the Super Nintendo, but aside from the Super Nintendo, what are some of your favorite consoles of all time?
In 1996, I got something called the Sega Genesis Model 2, and it was packaged with the Sega 6-pack. That was the best Christmas of my life, and that was absolutely the most fun I have ever had over a holiday break. The Sega 6-pack included, I couldn't believe it. I was 10 I was 10 in 1996 or 9. I don't know. I'm 46 now, so you do the math. But so I remember thinking, my God, I wasn't expecting this, but this cartridge has Sonic, and it has Streets of Rage, and it has Golden Axe, and it has Super Hang-On. I couldn't believe that this one game, this one cartridge, gave me all of these experiences. And it was because I was one of those kids that grew up with the Super Nintendo, and I always yearned for a Sega Genesis, but I never had one. And so when I got one, I just couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe that the first game that I got was a bunch of really cool, awesome games. Like, Jesus Christ, Mom. Frickin' A, way to go. You know what I'm saying, boys?
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
Awesome. Great choice. And that 6-pack was rad, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Maul.
Well,
Next question, sir.
Yeah, similar. Like, think about we don't have game series, the consoles, but like game series. Looking for your favorites. And you said, obviously, A Link to the Past, you want to re-experience. Final Fantasy V made you cry.
Can I tell you guys? So I get asked a lot. I get asked a lot to do from fan projects to lend my voice to a certain character, and it's probably my most favorite game franchise of all time. I'll do the voice, and you can tell me. Why don't you appraise the performance? Okay? Can we do that?
Okay.
All right, Maul. This is yours, Maul.
Just give me a second. Okay, wait. Ready?
Oh, I thought that was the voice.
No. Okay, here we go. If you run out of ammo, you can have mine. Who was that?
Oh, you know who that is. We talked about it last week.
If you run out of ammo, you can have mine. Infinite ammo.
You sold me this game at GameCo.
That's all of them.
Metal Gear.
Okay, all right. That would be a solid guess then.
Yeah, solid guess for a solid snake.
Snake.
God, guys, I thought you guys would be so enamored by that performance.
That was pretty good.
I was
It's a really
enamored.
good David Hayter.
I was enamored.
David Hayter.
Don't be a
You know,
hater.
I messaged David Hayter, and I do that. I used to send him those. Like, he's probably got me on a stalking list because I would send him
know
these
why that's
videos
so
all
funny.
the time, and I would send him these messages on Twitter, and I'd go, David, what are you doing over there? What's going on? Damn.
Are you wearing that shirt?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he blocked me, but then he unblocked me out of sympathy.
No.
I love David Hayter. He's such a nice guy. He's a really cool dude.
So you have talked to him before?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, nice. Nice. Very cool. All right, Logan, we're back to you, sir.
Yeah. Actually, there is a chat question I'd like to ask real quick as well. JB says, curious of his thoughts on all these super cheap all-in-one consoles that come with tens of thousands of games.
You know, listen, the fact of the matter is, a lot of people don't want to spend 100, 200, 300, 400, $14 billion to play some games. If you build like a Raspberry Pi, or if you go to eBay and you buy one of those little sticks that you plug into your computer, or you plug into your television, I'm sorry, and it comes with two generic looking PlayStation 2 controllers, but it's loaded up with NES, SNES, Genesis, all that stuff, and you enjoy that, that's fine. Like, the problem, there seems to be this sort of subdued malevolence in this community of retro, whereas if you're not playing on bare metal, or if you're not playing on a Mister, if you're not playing in a certain way, you're playing video games wrong, and that's a cardinal sin. I am of the thinking that even though I do all these very boutique mods and I design and engineer a lot of things, I don't expect you to, that be your first choice. If you enjoy playing games on some Chinese-made, highly illegal $20 game stick that you're going to put in your television, and you enjoy that, that's all that matters. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, if that's, I have no problem with it. I want you to have a good time. I want people just to have a good time. Really, it doesn't matter to me.
I'm with you on that. However it is that you enjoy the game, just enjoy it.
In the words of Adam Korlick, play the effing game.
Yeah.
Figure
it out.
Yeah.
Real quick. Yeah, I guess there wouldn't be much similarity to it. I was thinking at Five Below the other day, they have Game Boys now. It's the game. It's like the same molding of the Game Boy Color, but it has a lot of like cheap knockoff games loaded into it. Like, what's the hardware like in one of those? Will those ever be like salvaged or turn anything cool, or it's just like completely just molding and crap inside of it?
So really, what those are, what happens is somebody buys a bulk lot of chips that were either going to go into a really cheap tablet or a really cheap, crappy cell phone from like 10 years ago, and it's overstock. It's just a surplus that they can't really use anymore in China. So what they do is you have a couple of manufacturers that will take that hardware and they'll encapsulate it into a mold, and they'll put a screen on it, and they'll put some buttons on it, and they'll throw some emulators on it, and they'll call it what you're talking about. There's nothing uniquely interesting about those as far as I'm concerned. For 99% of the cases, it's just a bunch of old surplus hardware that's been liquidated that they don't have any other, that would serve no other utility because it's too old. So they just repurpose it and recycle it. It's very much so like all of the screen mods, like the IPS replacement screens, to your point, for the Game Boy. Those are really mostly screens from like the old Blackberries that were surplus, that have just existed in excess, that they have created a little driver board for, and that they plug those into, they interface those old screens to Game Boy Colors, Game Boy Pockets, DMGs, Game Boy Advances. So it's really the same principle. That's really how those things manifest.
Interesting.
Awesome.
All right. So for my question, you said in answer to Maul's question that that Metal Gear, Solid Snake specifically, stands out to you as one of your favorite game series. Is there a particular game in that series that's your favorite?
God, now you're really asking me to talk about my intimate life. I think that the first 3D title, Metal Gear Solid, left a very indelible mark in my psyche. Metal Gear Solid 2, I didn't like. Oh God, I don't know where I rank that. I would say that it's really hard for me to choose between a Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 3. It's really difficult for me.
Nice.
It's hard. The third one was very vast and it had a lot of depth, and it had a beautiful story, and a lot of character development that I really appreciated. But one was just very. I feel like Metal Gear Solid 1 was more of a topical experience for me. It wasn't very deep. It was deep. There were things like we were talking. There's a lot of socio-political things in all the Metal Gear games, like nuclear deterrence and Cold War and Pictures of Bob. I mean, all this stuff exists, but I really think that Metal Gear Solid 1 is probably my favorite, followed by Metal Gear Solid 3, then followed by Metal Gear Solid 4, and then Metal Gear Solid 2. I never liked Peace Walker. I never liked Portable Ops. Those games to me. Those were just too comic booky for me to really enjoy. They didn't seem as serious. Thematically, they didn't seem very serious. It's very much how like W.D. Richter wrote Big Trouble in Little China. He wrote a very serious Western screenplay that was redone into, that whole thing. That Big Trouble in Little China was really about Jack Burton. Somebody steals his horse and he goes into town, but they reworked that and made it more comical. That movie didn't work because people didn't appreciate it. Much like how I think people really didn't appreciate Peace Walker and Portable Ops, because it too was kind of made to be kind of cartoony. Like, Solid Snake was kind of like a goof in those. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Big Boss seemed to be kind of. He started talking like this, and it's just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Pause. What are you doing in your underwear? Yeah. Jesus Christ! It's a man. It's an AI. It's just not. It's just. Anywho, my point is, I don't like it. And another example, sort of another equivalent to this. I loved Escape from New York because it was dark and gritty and pretty serious. But Escape from LA, it's the exact same thing as Peace Walker. They turned it into a silly comic book.
Yeah.
You guys understand what I'm saying? And I'm not. That's not a knock at John Carpenter. That was his vision and that was his movie. But I didn't go for that. So those games, to me, I respect them too much. In other words, to really look at them through anything other than a pretty serious lens.
Gotcha. Are you looking forward to Delta at all?
I don't know. It's like I think I am. But ultimately, I do wonder, are they going to shoot any more voice acting, or is it going to be the same performances that they're just going to reuse? Do we know?
Yeah.
Because David Hayter said he was doing stuff. I'm like, well, what,
Yeah.
David, what does that mean? What does that mean, David? But he won't message me back after I asked for his address and everything else. I told him I was going to come over, and he haven't heard from him.
Join appearance on the show next time.
Yeah.
Sure. So this was one. So I've seen both Mike Chi as well as you talking about this on Twitter and a few other folks. But working with overseas suppliers and everything, the tariffs are obviously going to be an issue. So how are the tariffs affecting you and other small businesses, and what does the outlook look like?
We really don't know. And the reason we don't know is because the answer to your question, it changes on a whim. Yesterday, they announced that they were ceasing all parcels that were not in flat mailers, meaning packages from China. Processing was halted, and they were supposed to be sitting, I guess, at customs indefinitely. Today, they have changed that, and I guess very flippantly or on a whim have decided to begin processing these packages again. We don't know what the hell's going to happen, because small businesses and even merchants across the sea, we're not told anything. And they will literally come up with a mandate, and they'll say that this is in effect one day, and then 6 hours later, they will rescind it. So this is very traumatic. Like, I don't mean as far as like, well, I do mean, like, mentally and fiscally, this could be extraordinarily traumatic to small businesses like mine, or I won't speak for him, but I would imagine like Dr. Michael Cheese. We're not large companies that have huge buckets of money where we can afford to take these hits. But not only is it the 10% tariff that we have to account for, it's the seizure of like our property. Like, things that I'm desperately waiting for could be sitting in a dock for God knows how long, because somebody's decided that they're going to do that to just get back at China for whatever reason. So this could be very bad. It could be kind of bad, or it could be like somebody's just bluffing, and somebody's just decided to do this during the Chinese New Year when productivity is low anyways. And as soon as our China workforce comes back from Chinese New Year, everything will be back to business as usual. I don't know if this is some sort of nonsensical political front, or if this is actually like, if this is going to endure. But ultimately, if there's a 10% tariff and it sticks, what that means is everybody's costs are going to come up. Like, my costs to do business are going to raise. And it's not coming out of China's pocket. It's coming out of the small business who has to do business with China. I have to do business with China right now. So I have to pay for that. And unfortunately, that means I have to pass some of that off onto the customer in order to stay profitable. I don't want to do that. I'm going to try really hard not to do that. But it's really out of my hands. And I do hope people understand that these aren't choices that I've made, or these aren't choices that small business owners have any authority or any control or say over.
I hope it ends up working out as well as it can, and just it definitely will be affecting small businesses much more so than like the large corporations, right?
It could crush us. This could literally crush me. It could literally crush a lot of my friends who operate in this sphere on a very low level, because we're a small little boutique. I work in this tiny little lab. Like, I don't have a lot of money to fight overhead like that, Mm-hmm. Depending on what choices I won't say his name, but depending on what choices are made, that is going to either make it or break it for certain small businesses. It could be an absolute disaster.
It would be a disaster for our community, that's for sure. It'd be horrendous.
I think so.
I mean, the entire video game community too. I mean, You've got a Switch 2 coming out next year or this year at some point.
ESA spoke out against the tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, video games across the board. I mean, discs. People that still get discs, those are manufactured in Mexico. You have components coming from all over the world. Like, it's not like we can just spin up everything here on a whim.
No,
like, we got to get those ports from somewhere.
Well, the idea is obviously, well, the criticism is that, well, this is going to incentivize locally to begin the process of creating infrastructure for manufacturing. As far as I'm concerned, the fact of the matter is 25 years ago, we literally gave China all of our manufacturing. We gave them the PCB assembling equipment. We gave them all of this stuff. We gave it to them. And now, 25 years later, it's like we're wanting to rescind all of that. And we're wanting to overnight say, I gave my finger, but I'm just waving. If you guys across the board, we're going to bring this back home and we're going to just, we're going to do it that way. That's not going to work. In the long run, that's really not going to work because it is going to probably take 10, maybe 15 years to have the sound and broad infrastructure necessary to be able to accommodate the volume and workload of manufacturing that we would need, not just for small companies like mine, but it's a cumulative number. By the time you add all the me's together in this country, that's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot, not including Nintendo, not including all of these other companies that work overseas, because of course the labor is much cheaper, much like iPhone, for example, or much like Apple. But I don't think that it's sustainable, or I don't think it's at all absolutely sustainable for us to bring that sort of manufacturing back when we already dispersed it and gave it all away knowingly. We did that to incentivize them to. There's a whole thing about it, but the point is you can't put the toothpaste back into the tube, and I feel like that's what we're trying to do very ignorantly, and it's hurting people. Like, we're really hurting people, not across the pond, but right here in this lab, this sex symbol that you're looking at right here in real time.
We can't have that. We cannot have that.
Isn't that right, Bob?
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable. But Jack, I really like your next question. You just added it there to the list. I think it's a good one.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but what are some of the pros and cons of hardware modding an original console versus something like an FPGA device like a Mister?
It's a really good question. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it depends on what you're. How to answer this, because a lot of people get really touchy. Not you, Jack, but people get really emotional. This could get really spirited really quickly.
Okay.
Pros and cons. The pros are FPGA-based consoles are theoretically really no better than software-based emulation. These are both abstracts of the original hardware. And just because something is done in FPGA does not mean that it is just as, if not more accurate than something done in software emulation or vice versa. The pro of using original hardware is you never have to be concerned if whether or not the experience that you're playing or the experience that you're encountering is absolutely cycle perfect and accurate to what the real hardware does. If the super analog NT and all of these analog systems were so perfect and not emulation as their advertising erroneously states, explain to me why they come out with firmware patches to fix specific games. It's very simple. It's all just nonsensical. It's all just nonsensical marketing, and it's really disingenuous. But the pros are you get cycle accurate, perfect hardware that you never have to worry about. It's your original hardware, and it's there's a tangible experience with that. Being something that you own personally, if it's a childhood system that you have, whatever the case may be, it's the real deal. The cons are it can be more expensive. A Mister fully equipped, for example, what does that run somebody these days? I don't know, $300 or $400, $200. I don't know what the prices are.
It's about $400 or $500.
It's gone way up because when I built mine back in like 2019 or 2020, it was like significantly cheaper.
So if we just look at the cost analysis assessment of this, like a Mister,
like 400.
Let's say $450, that will encompass everything from the Atari 2600 to the Saturn and PlayStation and N64. Now that's a good that could be a good value proposition for you. But if you have old consoles and you don't want to F with emulation, whether that be software or hardware, and you want to play on true bare metal, my mods aren't expensive. If you want a nice RGB mod for your Super Nintendo and you want a DIY, it's $35 if you already have the hardware. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of these systems don't need any modifications. The PlayStation 2 certainly doesn't need any modifications to get outstanding video. The fact is, the PS1 doesn't. The Genesis, some models of the Genesis really don't. The Super Nintendo, if you have a one chip, doesn't. A lot of these systems, you really just need a good upscaler or video processor, and you're good to go. So it's really difficult for me to answer that question without being particularly biased, because I see it from two very different points of view. The convenience of FPGA emulation means that you can codify all of your systems into this one singular appliance and pay your $500. But that to me is just not as fun. That's just not as interesting to me. And it just seems so clinical when I look at this case and I'm like, I have a Mister, certainly. I've probably used it for maybe an hour and a half. And it's just because there's something about, it's just like people playing on flash card. Here's an example. It's like people who play on flash cartridges. Like, there's nothing wrong with the EverDrive. But there's something about turning on your EverDrive and just selecting a game from a menu that's very different from walking to your shelf, pulling a game off the shelf, admiring the label artwork, smelling the juices in the cartridges, and then inserting that into your hardware. To me, there's a very visceral, tangible, like, relationship between me and my hardware, literally, that you just don't get, I think, in a lot of respects with devices that, let's say, supplement real hardware. That's just my point of view. That's just my opinion. It's a matter of what your goals are and what you really care about. One necessarily, but to sort of summarize all this, one is not better than the other. Bare metal is not better than software, than a Raspberry Pi or a Mister. A Mister or a Raspberry Pi is not better than real hardware. It's just a matter of what you really want and what way you enjoy to play games the most, and that's all that matters.
Yeah,
a lot of gatekeeping. There's so much gatekeeping here. Yeah. And I'm called a gatekeeper because I do mods, but it's like, no, I want you to experience the games in the way that you most find pleasurable.
I agree with you, though. I mean, I'm definitely there with the real hardware. There's something about it that I just like. I don't even honestly know why, but I do like the other stuff too. Maul, I think I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No,
too.
it's fine.
I'm
just gonna say I'm like the same way with film, though. You know, like, I've still got a DVD collection. You know, and I like, you know, having the option, but I do still obviously stream a lot. But I do think that you're right. There is a different relationship in collecting, and also just like, you know, like, we're old. We remember what it's like for things to have been scarce. Yep. Right. And that's the issue, though. It's like, as much as, like, I do lean towards, like, preservation and collecting physical media and just the tradition, you know, like the relationship with the collection and everything. But at the same time, there's also, like, no going back, because even with me, like, loving all those things and appreciating them, if you said, like, well, do you want to just get rid of streaming altogether and just go back to discs? I'd be like, well, no, because I don't have the room to store all the movies I would ever want to watch that are now forever at my fingertips here and everything. So I do think there's definitely both, a room for both.
Yes.
The only thing that sucks is, like, you know, like, I wish that people could still, who are growing up now, would still, like,
have those experiences.
Kind of know, yeah, exactly. Like know what it was to not have everything at your fingertips. Yeah. Not that I wish poverty on anybody, but just because it builds a different appreciation for, you know, for art and for just, like, rewatching things. Like, I don't know if as many people growing up now continue like rewatch, like, their favorite film over and over again, or replay their favorite game over and over again, because it's all you had, you know. And so there are details, things that are picked up upon replaying, you know, that or rewatching that you wouldn't have gotten the first playthrough, and they won't necessarily have that, like, scan through and get picked up that careful, precise detail.
You could have mentioned that last week or 2 weeks ago when we were talking about something. It was like, why did we do it? It was all we had. I remember you saying that, and I think that's kind of what you're.
Well, yeah, I think that's exactly, precisely on the money, because I feel like if you have a Mister that you've invested in, and you've got every emulator and every ROM on there, I feel like you're going to become pretty complacent and pretty bored pretty quickly, because you're not going to have that appreciation factor is not going to be there. Because if you don't want for anything, which you wouldn't in that case in terms of video games, you're not really going to want to play anything for too long.
Oh yeah,
because you're just going to be overwhelmed by just the access alone, that's not good.
It's very true, and they've done studies on it. There's a overwhelming, and you literally run out of executive function in your brain, and with the music streaming services or the movie streaming services that you have access to about everything, the vast majority of people listen or watch the same thing over and over again. Yeah, I try to limit myself even with the EverDrive. Like I try to imagine that, I'm just going for one game and try to finish it, but it is hard because you're like, well, maybe I could play this game right now. But
I've been doing a lot of over the past couple of months. I've been playing a lot of games that I've never beaten before.
Oh, cool.
Me and my best friend have been doing this. They've been watching me do this. And I have made a rule and a very concerted effort to go to the shelf and pick up the game that I want to beat and put it in my system, as opposed to using a flash card. And for me, I know it's just a mental thing. It's a totally different experience. It really is for me.
There's so much psychology with all this stuff and how it works.
Sure.
I did want to mention real quick, and then Logan, I'll get to you. We are 9 minutes past. Is it all right, Voultar, if we finish out this round of questions?
I'm here until the cows come home, boys.
Okay.
It's go time.
All right. I just want to respect your time. All right, Logan, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm totally with you on the whole experience of putting in physical things. Like, that's how I got into laser discs. Like, my grandparents just had the old disc, but man, I love just plugging in that giant disc into the player and watching a movie, even though it's like, kind of a lower resolution than you could see that movie now. There's just something about like having it and then watching it in that particular way. That's just a really cool experience.
For sure.
I just want to say something. I could bend down right now and pick up a VHS tape. That's how, that's how old school matter of fact, fellas. I was just watching. I have South Park on this, as well as an adult movie I got off HBO back in 2001. I'm all about old techno. I'm all about these analog formats. I mean, I'm with you. There is something about putting this in your VCR and enjoying it, even though it's not the highest video quality. It's like vinyl. There's just something warm about it.
Yeah, we didn't.
Hey, fellas, I didn't mean warm as in, come on.
We didn't have, in my little small town, we didn't get South Park, so my friends in other places that I knew would tape it off the TV. So like the VHS South Park experience, and South Park's still my favorite show of all time, but that VHS South Park experience will always be super special.
Yeah.
For sure.
I thought you were going to say your friends like reenacted it for you.
That'd be even better. That would be so much fun.
I stretched the tape. The tape literally stretched in my Caraco Terminator 2 VHS tape. I watched it hundreds and hundreds of times.
I wore out my original Ghostbusters. I used to watch that movie over and over again as a kid.
Yep.
Just the part with Ray and the ghost, though.
I don't know what Ghostbusters you guys watched, but can I get a copy?
All right, Mom.
You've seen that part. Come on now. Don't
I don't know what's going on. I need an adult.
One bit of information I know I've had people ask, what systems need recaps?
Oh, good question. I would say that the systems that are most in danger, let's put it that way, systems that may not function until a recap, that's a whole other category from systems that are in potential danger. The PC Engine Duo is by far the system that is absolutely rotting away because this caustic fluid from these electrolytic caps has just bathed the board and is absolutely eating away the circuitry. So that system's numero uno on the list. The Super Nintendo, which is remarkable, over the past 4 or 5 years I've noticed, these things are going down too. And irreparable harm is being committed onto them by these caustic electrolytic caps that are leaking. So I would say the PC Engine Duo is number one. I would say that the Super Nintendo is number 2. I would say that the Sega Saturn, especially VA0 and VA1 models, that's going to be number 3. I actually did a workshop on repairing those on a live stream a couple of months ago. Number 4 is definitely going to be, God, I shudder at it, but it's going to be the Game Gear. It'll smell like a wet fish market when you take the thing apart, because those caps are very smelly. Reminds me of high school, but I'm just saying. God, Jesus, stop with the nonsense. God Christ, what the hell's wrong with me? But the Game Gears are absolutely being. I've got a whole box of Game Gears over here that are severely damaged. They really need new motherboards altogether, because the electrolytic caps of the 90s or the early mid 90s. The reason that is because the fluid, the electrolytic in these caps, the dielectric too, it was bootlegged, and the chemistry, the formula was stolen, changed, and modified, and passed around all of these capacitor manufacturers in the early 90s, and a lot of them really didn't get it quite right, and so it was very unstable, especially after exposed to heat and after being exposed to time. And that's why these systems, for the most part, are being destroyed and rotten from the inside from these bad caps. Now, as far as systems that just may not work well until a recap, maybe the regular Nintendo, a good power filter cap on that. The Atari 2600. I've never seen any damage really committed to any to those systems, but a recap could certainly fix them right up, as well as other systems like the Sega Genesis and Master System.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for that. It's been something I've been wondering. All right, Maul, you're up.
Well, we're, as we just stated a bit before, we're old. So I have a history going back with the games. Back to these, you just mentioned the Atari 2600 for me. What about yourself? What got you into gaming? What's your history like?
You know, I tried it when I was a young boy growing up in the heartland of Kentucky. I just tried to follow everything that my brother was doing. And so in about 1989 or 90, I was about 3. My earliest memory was when I was about 3. I remember watching or playing games. My earliest memory playing games was when I was 3. I remember watching my mom and my aunt with my brother playing Metroid. And I can remember seeing them get to Mother Brain, but they just couldn't defeat the old girl. And so that's really when I thought this is really cool, because everyone was jumping up and down. Everyone was super excited. I didn't quite understand it at the time, but I was watching the television and I was like, that sort of transferred onto me. I remember this like it was yesterday. That's remarkable. It's been, 35 years ago, 36 years ago. But that watching that as a little boy and everyone be so excited, that's when I started gravitating and like really paying attention and enjoying Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Metroid, Super Mario 2, the best one.
I love Super Mario 2.
We were just talking about that.
I'm glad that it gets some love these days, because I've always thought that was an awesome game. I remember anticipating it before release.
I beat it for the first time just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
On the NES. Yeah, I'm telling you, there's a lot of things I've not done in life, but I got a bucket list, and I'm going the distance.
You should Twitch it. I bet a lot of people would watch.
That's a good idea.
Maybe.
Your bucket,
maybe.
Voultar's bucket list.
The bucket list.
The bucket list of Voultar.
All right, Logan.
Yeah. All right. So, do you have any planned future products, and are there any that you can actually talk about?
No. Yes, there are some things that there are some pretty damn cool things that I'm working on. Excuse me, but I have made the mistake of talking about the SNES Edge Enhancer 2 years before I really should have. And I got a plethora of hate mail for not releasing it and all this sort of trolling activity because it didn't materialize on other people's timelines. And I was a little premature in talking about it. So I've kind of learned, don't talk about things unless they're absolutely ready. So I'm very much so looking forward to discussing the stuff that I got going on that I think people are really going to like, but hell no, I'm not talking about it. You can't make me do it. You're not going to do it.
No,
Well,
that makes sense.
When
You
you're
got
ready
20
to
bucks?
talk,
You got
when
20
you're ready-
bucks?
when you're ready to talk about it, you're welcome back.
Thank you.
Talk about whatever.
Love to come
Yeah.
back. This has been so much
Yeah.
fun.
Glad that
You're
you
always welcome to peddle some wares here.
absolutely. And I'll probably buy all of them, like I have been.
Thank you. Good.
And with that, Jack, what do you got to say before we ride off into the sunset tonight?
You know, tonight I just want to reiterate. I'm closing in on 2 weeks until the Cupid's Undie run. Excuse me. We've got we've got a whole bunch of people that are going to go run out in their underwear for charity here in downtown Kansas City, and we're going to freeze their butts off because it's supposed to get cold next week. So if you can, I'll put the link in Discord. I'll put the link in over there, and if you want to donate, that's awesome. If not, don't worry about it. But that's still trying to get amped up for that and ready for a Super Bowl win, hopefully on Sunday.
And I'll put that in the show notes because I mean you get to pay for Jack to run naked in nearly naked in Kansas City and freeze his butt off. Like that's
I won't
a
get
pretty
arrested
good.
for it. That's the key.
Yeah, it's a pretty good return on your dollar. So you should do that, and it's for a good cause. Maul, what do you got for us before we head out?
Yeah, I guess for any movie buffs out there, I know my plans tomorrow. There's a screening of the new 4K remaster of Hellraiser that's blowing nationwide. So anyone who's a fan of horror from the maestro Clive Barker, I guess go out there and check it out.
Awesome. Will do. And Logan, what do you got for us, sir?
I guess I've been making more progress on my sci-fi short film, Edge of Oblivion. VFX
It looks
is
great.
going well.
Y'all, you're in
Thank
for a
you.
treat with his movie. It looks awesome. He's been sending me progress. It's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, I can't wait to share it with everyone.
Really good. When you get that trailer, we'll play it.
Yep, I've been so busy with the VFX that I haven't edited one together yet, but once that's done, I'll get to work on that.
Awesome. Awesome. And Voultar, what are your closing comments here on the game show tonight?
I just want to tell you, gentlemen, that you guys are an absolute blast. Thank you for letting me come and have some fun with you all. And this was wonderful. I've had an absolute fun time joking around and just being really light. This was really nice. And I hope that one day you'll invite me back. And on top of that, I hope one day you invite me and Triforce back at the same time so I can embarrass him about a story when he came to my house once. He knows what I'm talking about. Mark, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, and we do too, but we can't say it. But we'll definitely have you back, Voultar. This was an absolute blast. This was so much fun. I think we've been talking about it in the host room. We've all had a really great time tonight. It's been a lot of fun. I would like to dedicate tonight's show to my mom, who's in the hospital right now, battling some cancer. So I just wanted to say that here on the show tonight. But thank you very much for watching the game show, and we will see you same time next week.